So then Amr pills Muawiyah, and he says, "Oh Muawiyah, do you hear what Abdullah says?" And Muawiyah says, "What does he say?" So Abdullah informs him of the hadith. Then Muawiyah says, "And are we the ones who killed Ammar? The ones who killed Ammar are the ones who brought him here. And he was in his home. They're the ones who brought him out to battle. So they're the ones who killed him and caused him to die." So he's twisting it a little. So then the people, the narrator says, the people started to go out saying, "The ones who killed Ammar are the ones who brought him here." And this starts to spread. They start to say this all over the army of Sham. And then our narrator, Abdurrahman al-Sulmi, says, "I don't know which is stranger. Him, meaning Muawiyah, in saying something like this, saying such an argument, or them in believing him in this." I don't know which of the two is stranger. So the army of Muawiyah did not split up and remain together because of what he said. So then Ali radiallahu anhu orders another attack, and this attack also continues for days. At one point during the battle, the left flank of Muawiyah's army attacked the right flank of the army of Ali, and it was a strong and brutal attack. An eyewitness says, "I saw 800 men from the army of Ali trying to push back this attack until 600 of them were killed. And they came off their horses and they started to fight on their knees." That's how fierce the fighting was. And then Ali felt that the right flank of his army had been defeated. So he sent Al-Ashtar al-Nukha'i at the head of a regiment. And he was able to defend the right flank of the army. And then he took him back to his place. So they fight for 3 nights non-stop. And then Ali attacks the heart of the army of Muawiyah. And that night of this fighting was called Laylatul Harir. Harir is just these sounds that it's like murmuring and unclear things that people are saying. And there was much death and much fighting. Usually people go back to eat and to pray. On this night people prayed on their horses and they fought until Fajr. They were praying on their horses. And their swords broke and their shields broke and their arrows were finished. And they fought with bare hands and with rocks. One of the Sahaba says, "We fought the Romans and we fought the Persians. By Allah, we have never seen fighting more fierce than the fighting of companions to each other." Before, they were used to fight people who were fighting for the sake of the dunya and for fighting for other reasons, so the Muslims could break them, even if they were outnumbered. But now, it's people who are fighting for Allah, meaning people who are fighting for Allah. That's why the fighting was so fierce and so intense. So then Ali, as we said, attacks the heart of the army of Muawiyah. And between Muawiyah and the army of Ali, there were 5 regiments. And Ali broke the first regiment, and then the second, and then the third, and then he defeated and crushed the 4th. And when Muawiyah radiallahu anhu saw this, he became scared, he became worried. And at this point, 70,000 men had been killed from both sides. 45,000 from the army of Muawiyah and 25,000 from the army of Ali. So Amr ibn al-As saw defeat, so he made a suggestion to Muawiyah. And some books will tell you that this incident is fabricated, but this is the authentic incident. And it's in Al-Bukhari, and it's also in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad. Habib ibn Abu Thabit says, "I went to Abu Wa'il, and he tells him, we were in Siffin, when the fight with the Syrians grew fierce. And then Amr said to Muawiyah, 'Send the scripture, meaning the Quran, to Ali and call him towards the book of Allah.' And he could not refuse it to you." So the army of Muawiyah sees that they're losing now and they want to end the battle, or they're going to lose for good. Amr ibn al-As tells him the best way to end the battle is to raise the book of Allah and say, "Let the book of Allah judge between us." So then people started to put the Mus'haf on top of their spears and they would hold it up and start yelling, "Let the book of Allah judge between us." Some people agreed with them. Some people disagreed from the army of Ali. A group said, "How can we refuse? Who would refuse that the book of Allah be used to arbitrate between people?" So they agreed. And amongst these, they were headed by Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais al-Kindi. And others they refused and said, "It's only a trick. They only lifted it when they saw that they're going to be defeated." And this was the opinion of Ali radiallahu anhu. So he said, "Let's fight and let's end this now. This is only a trick because they're going to be defeated." And others were saying, "How can we not respond to the book of Allah?" And Ali sent to Al-Ash'ath. Al-Ash'ath, we said, he is of the head of the group who said, we accept. Ali radiallahu anhu sent to him saying, woe to you, what are you doing? And Al-Ash'ath tells him, they called us to the book of Allah and we accept. So they stopped. And then Ali radiallahu anhu couldn't control the situation. So he sends to Muawiyah. He says, what do you want? And Muawiyah says, between us and you is the book of Allah. So he tells him, why raise the Mus'haf? He says, let us go to what Allah commands in His book. So Ali says, how? Muawiyah says, we send a man from your party and we'll send someone from ours. And then get them to go by what is in the book of Allah, to judge by what is in the book of Allah. And then we follow what they agreed to. So they go to Ali with this proposal of Muawiyah, and Ali refuses. And the people of Iraq, they accept. And Ali tells them it's a trick. So the people threw their swords down. Even though Ali radiallahu anhu, he was of the wiser opinion, and he was almost victorious, and he was going to end the fitna, but it shows you the seriousness of disobeying your Amir. Ali radiallahu anhu said one thing and they said the other. And he was of the better opinion radiallahu anhu. So then Muawiyah's army sent Amr ibn al-As. And the army of Ali, every time Ali radiallahu anhu suggested someone, they refused him. Even Al-Ashtar, who was the leader of Iraq, one of their nobles, Ali at the end said Al-Ashtar al-Nukh'i. And we said he's one of the people of fitna. Even him they refused him. And they said we don't want anyone except Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, because he is a man of good opinion. And you remember we mentioned earlier, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, when he was the governor, and Ali radiallahu anhu came to him at Kufa and asked him to come out, what he told his people? He told the people, this is a fitna, don't go. And he started telling the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and he told them not to go out. So now they saw that this is actually a fitna and there's so much killing, and we should have listened to Abu Musa. So they said, we won't accept anyone except Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. So they went to him in his place and they found him and they brought him to represent the army of Ali. So now we move to the negotiations that took place between the party of Ali and the party of Muawiyah. And there are many false narrations concerning this. Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu was known for being one of the most intelligent and quick-witted of the Arabs. Amr ibn al-As and Muawiyah were one of the most quick-witted and intelligent of the Arabs. It is narrated in an incident that one day they challenged each other in this. They were sitting, this is before these incidents, they were sitting in the gathering, and then Muawiyah claims to be of the most quick-witted of the Arab. And Amr ibn al-As challenges him to that. So then Amr ibn al-As asked everyone in the room to leave, if they're going to have a battle of wits now. Everyone in the room leaves. And then Amr ibn al-As tells Muawiyah, I want to tell you something. Come close. And then he comes close. Come closer. And then he comes to him and he tells him in his ear, he whispers to him in his ear. He tells him, why would I have to whisper in your ear if there is no one in the room besides us? So Amr ibn al-As was very intelligent and very quick-witted when it comes to these things. So they chose him to be the representative of the party of Muawiyah. But because he was known for being quick-witted, you find many false narrations concerning this arbitration, that Amr ibn al-As tricked Abu Musa al-Ash'ari into saying, I don't want Ali, and then he removes his ring and he says, I remove Ali just as I remove this ring. And then Amr ibn al-As says, I affirm Muawiyah just as I affirm my ring on my finger. These are all narrations that are like fabricated about this incident. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu was not unintelligent to be fooled in such a way. And if we look at the details of what happens in the arbitration, he stops Amr ibn al-As from taking him down a certain path that he wanted to take him. So he was very intelligent and very aware of what's going on. So they write down the declaration, and it's been preserved in the books of history, and it reads as such. It says, this is a declaration between Ali ibn Abi Talib and Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyaan, declaring that Ali ibn Abi Talib has appointed an arbitrator on behalf of the people of Kufa and all those supporting him. And similarly, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyaan has appointed an arbitrator on behalf of all those who follow him. And we, holding the Book of Allah the Almighty and His order as judge, declare that both of us will follow nothing but the injunctions of Allah in His book. And we abide by the rules of the Qur'an from Al-Fatiha to its end, and declare to follow what is permitted and hold back what is forbidden. The two appointed arbitrators are Abu Musa, Abdullah ibn Qais al-Ash'ari, and Amr ibn al-As. They will give a decision according to the dictates of the Quran, otherwise in accordance with the Sunnah if the Quran is found silent over the issue. This is with the agreement that they made. And they stipulated that if those two people, radiallahu anhuma, make a decision that people can't refuse their judgment, and that they can't harm them, or they can't harm their family. Someone will not like the judgment, then go attack his family or attack them. Meaning from the armies of Ali and Muawiyah. No one will attack them, nor attack their families. And that the soldiers from both armies are safe, and that their families are safe, and that the judgment will be upon all the ummah, and there will be no fighting until they make their decision. So the judgment was not until Ramadan, and they're in the month of Safar. So the armies go back. And they were given also the choice that if they wanted to delay the judgment beyond Ramadan, they could do that. And that they will meet in the area of Dawmatul Jandal. So this marked the end, for now, of the Battle of Sufyaan. So now the army of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is united, and they're satisfied, and they return home. And Ali radiallahu anhu returns in an army, but it's boiling. And when Ali returns to Al-Kufa, 12,000 leave his army, and they go to a place called Harura. These people, this 12,000 who left the army of Ali, they are known to us today as Al-Khawarij. But back then they were referred to as Al-Haruriyya, after the place in which they all began to settle, which is Harura, which is near Kufa in Iraq. So they stayed there, and they went to Zayd ibn Hisn, and they asked him to be in charge of them, and he refused. And then they went to Yazid ibn Asim, and he refused. So they leave now this 12,000, and they have a group there, and they left the army of Ali radiallahu anhu. Notice that not a single Sahabi went out with them, because they had gone astray. So not one Sahabi went out with the Khawarij. They come to Ali radiallahu anhu and they tell him, what is this that you have done? Meaning the arbitration. So Ali tells them what you asked for. And there were amongst them people who wanted the arbitration. And Ali didn't want it. And they forced him to it. And they said, we refused it. We didn't want the arbitration. And then he points to the people who wanted it. He says, those forced me upon it. And I didn't want it. So they told him, this tahkeem is not valid. And by that they meant the fact that you put two people to arbitrate and to make this decision regarding the religion of Allah. That we should just follow what the Quran says, and you shouldn't have two men decide in this affair. So they told him this tahkeem is not valid. And they asked him, are you fighting upon truth or upon falsehood? And he tells them, upon the truth. And they say, if you fight upon truth, then how do you agree to this tahkeem? This is nothing but misguidance. And the decision is for Allah. And there is no judgment for humans. And they said, what becomes their motto from there on? La hukma illa lillah. That there is no judgment except to Allah. And they start to spread this in the army. And even those who wanted the tahkeem, now they don't want it. So 12,000 split off from the army of Ali. And this was in the beginning of the Khawarij. And amongst the leaders of the Khawarij, Shibth ibn Rub'i, the messenger who was sent twice to Muawiyah, and he caused problems twice, and now this is the third time he's causing problems. So amongst their leaders was Shibth ibn Rub'i, and they gathered under Abdullah ibn al-Kawwa al-Yashkuri, and they put over their army Shibth ibn Rub'i. And then they said that the issue is shura, consultation, and the bay'ah is only to Allah, and we enjoin good and forbid evil. So Ali radiallahu anhu sent Abdullah ibn Abbas, and he debated with them. And Ali radiallahu anhu himself also, then after the debate of Abdullah ibn Abbas, he goes to them also to talk to them. And he goes to one of their leaders, Yazid ibn Qais, and he prays 2 rak'at in his tent. And then he spoke to him, and he found him to be a wise man, and he convinced him. And Yazid ibn Qais leaves the Khawarij. And then Ali put him in charge of certain areas. And then he spoke to the rest of them. And he asked them, what is your problem with the tahkeem? They told him that the tahkeem is for Allah. So he tells them, we didn't choose these two people so they can decide the affair, but we chose these two men so they can decide of what the Book of Allah says on the affair, on the issue. So a lot of them were convinced by this. So a lot of them were convinced by what he said, and some narrations will tell you that all of them joined his army until they say what the arbitrators come out with, and other narrations will tell you that a large group of them joined the army of Ali, but not all of them. So now the two arbitrators met in Dawmat al-Jandal, and it was Abu Musa al-Ash'ari and Amr ibn al-As. And each of them brought 400 men with them. And they brought as many Sahaba as possible, because the one who has a lot of Sahaba, it's a sign that he's with the truth. And they started to speak for a while, and all of the details of the negotiations are preserved in the books of history. So they started to speak for a while, and they did not come to a solution. So then in the end, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari tells Amr ibn al-As, you know that Iraq will never accept Muawiyah, and the Sham will never accept Ali. So I suggest we remove both of them and bring Abdullah ibn Umar. So then Amr ibn al-As tells him, do you think he would accept? He says, if we insist, he will accept. So then Amr ibn al-As suggests, what if we bring Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas? And Abu Musa says no, he refuses. Then he says, what if we bring Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As? And he's not any lesser than Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Khattab. And Abu Musa says no. And every time Amr ibn al-As suggests someone to be the Khalifa, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari refuses. He says, I don't agree to anyone except Ibn Umar. So both of them decided that they will remove Ali and that they will remove Muawiyah from his position, and they will have the people choose the next Khalifa. So the news reaches Ali of the decision of the arbitrators. The fighting stops, and this is what they're all waiting on, and this is the decision they came with, to remove the Khulafa, and they have not decided anyone in his place, nor how to choose that person. So the news reaches Ali, and he refuses. And he gives a khutbah, and he shows his displeasure with the decision, and his refusal of the decision. And then he orders the army to prepare so they can continue fighting Muawiyah. We'll end it with battle. So then the Khawarij came again. And they came to Ali radiallahu anhu again, and they said, now you refuse it? And he tells them, I was against it. They said, but you accepted it in the end. And he tells them, so did you. And they said, yes, we accepted it in the end, and we erred. We were wrong when we did that, and we became kuffar when we accepted it. Because part of the Khawarij, part of their belief is that when you do a major sin, they believe that takes you out of the fold of Islam. So they said, yes, we accepted the tahkeem, and we erred and we did kufr. We made kufr when we accepted the tahkeem. So we became Muslims again. We said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and became Muslims again. And now we want you to testify that you made kufr and enter into Islam again, and then we'll follow you, we'll pledge to you. So then he says, La wallah, I will not testify against myself with kufr. And this is, the Muslim, this is something they never want for themselves. Why would you testify against yourself that you are kafir? So he refuses that. So they left and they called him a kafir, and they left with 16,000 men. Ali radiallahu anhu sent Abdullah ibn Abbas to talk to them. And he describes that when he went to them, he found them to be devout worshippers of Allah. And this is one of the descriptions of the Prophet ﷺ about them, their salah, and how they pray. Abdullah ibn Abbas was amazed by how, he says, their foreheads were torn from prostrating to Allah, and their hands became so rough like the knees of camels from prostrating so much to Allah. So he debates with them, radiallahu anhu. The rest of the Khawarij left, and they went to Madain. And in that town, there was the governor, who was Abdullah ibn Khabbab ibn al-Arat. Khabbab ibn al-Arat, radiallahu anhu, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, the one who was punished and tortured so many times just for saying, Allah is my Lord. The one whom they would make him lie on red-hot coals. And the eyewitnesses said that nothing would extinguish those coals except the fat from his back, melting and extinguishing the coals. So this is his son, Abdullah ibn Khabbab ibn al-Arat. And he was the governor in this area of Madain, and he was reciting the Quran. On the way there, the Khawarij, they found a Muslim, and they asked him what he thought of Ali. They said, is he a kafir? He said, no, he is Amir al-Mu'mineen. So they killed him. And then they said, we can't pledge to Ali, and Muawiyah is the enemy of Allah, so they chose Abdullah ibn Wahb al-Rasibi, and they pledged to him as Amir al-Mu'mineen. And on the way they found a Christian, and they said to each other, no, he's a dhimmi, we won't harm him, so they leave him alone, even though they killed the Muslim. So they reached Al-Madain and approached Abdullah ibn Khabbab ibn al-Arat, and he was sitting in a garden that was owned by a Christian, and he had the Quran with him. So they came to him and they said, what do you say of Ali? And he says, Amir al-Mu'mineen. And they said, if you say that, that which is around your neck, meaning the Quran, would order us to kill you. So they start to debate with him, they start to speak with Abdullah ibn Khabbab. And while they're doing that, one of them, he finds a date in the ground. So he takes it and he puts it in his mouth. And they yelled at him, all of them. We didn't buy that. So look how religious they were, but they had gone astray when it came to certain issues. During the talks, that later on a pig comes by that belongs to the Christian, and one of them kills the pig. Because there are many there in the area. So they told him that it's halal for the Christian, and they all insisted on paying the price to the owner of it. So now they're debating with Abdullah ibn Khabbab. And they said, tell us of your father. Then Abdullah ibn Khabbab starts to narrate a hadith from his father about fitan, in which in the end it says, Kun Abdullah al-Maqtul wa la takun Abdullah al-Qatil. Be the servant of Allah who is killed, and do not be the servant of Allah who is the killer. In the end of this fitan, in the end of the hadith. So he tells them this hadith. So then they asked him, tell us about Abu Bakr and Umar, what do you think of them? And he says good things about them. Then they said, what do you think of Uthman? And he says good things about Uthman. Tell us about Ali. And he says he is more knowledgeable in the book of Allah than you, and greater in wisdom. So then they asked him again about Ali, and he says good things. So then they cut off his ear. And they asked him again about Ali, and he says good things about him. And they cut off his other ear. And they start cutting him off bit by bit until they killed him, radiallahu anhu. And then they went to his wife, and his wife was pregnant. And they asked her, what do you think of Ali? And she said good things about Ali, radiallahu anhu. And they killed her, and they tore open her stomach. So then they asked the owner of the garden to sell them one date palm, one tree. And he was afraid of them. So he told them, take it for free. And they said, no, we want to buy it. Because they're religious. So he tells them, how strange you are. This is the Christian who owns the meadow. How strange you are. You kill the likes of Abdullah ibn Khabbab, and you don't accept a palm tree from me? He was surprised. What kind of religiosity is this? You kill someone, a righteous man like that, and you don't want to accept a palm tree from me. You don't want to even take it by force, because you're religious. So then when the news of this reaches Ali, he says, now we should fight them. Because first when he let them go through Madain, the people were saying, why don't you fight them? And Ali tells them there is a difference between a people who wanted the truth but couldn't reach it, and there's a difference between people who know that they're on falsehood and they insist upon it. So he means that the Khawarij, they were actually seeking the truth, but they didn't get the truth. But Muawiyah radiallahu anhu knows he's wrong, and he insists upon fighting. This is what Ali is telling them. But now, when they killed Abdullah ibn Khabbab, he says, now we should fight them. Because now they're starting to wreak havoc in the lands. So he sent them Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, telling them to turn over the killers of Abdullah ibn Khabbab. And they refused. And Ali radiallahu anhu went to them in the famous Battle of Nahrawan. And he killed all 1,800 of them. 1,800 men. He killed all of them except for 8. Only 8 made it. And only 9 were killed from the army of Ali radiallahu anhu. And these 8, they went and they gathered in another area of Nakhila. And Ali sent them Ibn Abbas, and they also refused. And he sent them another army, and he crushed them there at Nakhila. And then many others surfaced again. And every time they would surface, Ali would send them armies and destroy them. And there's a hadith in the book of Muslim where the Prophet ﷺ describes this. The Prophet ﷺ says,